This is John Lee from Wealth Dragons, and today I'm going to talk to those of you who are currently renting a property. If you're renting a property right now, stop renting, because what I have to share with you will change exactly what you should be doing. So if you're renting right now, you're not making any benefits from the house going up in value. Also, if you're renting every single month, the rent is actually going down the drain, so you're not actually gaining anything every month. And plus, what if you could rent the property that you're living in and eventually own that property? It's a concept called rent to buy. So let's go for a drive and I'll share with you exactly how that works. So how does rent to buy work? What is rent to buy? Well, to put it very simply, you're going to be renting a property and eventually buying it at a later date. And that's pretty much how it works. So the problem at the moment is if you're renting and you're not buying, is probably because you haven't saved enough money for a deposit, or you can't get a mortgage, or you don't earn enough salary to be qualified to get a mortgage. That's one of the main reasons. And if you think about it right now, you're working every single day to create a salary, and a big chunk of that goes towards paying off the rent. I mean, almost 50% of people's salary goes towards paying off, you know, the rent on a property, and you don't get to see it. So as a tenant, if you've been renting for 3 to 5 years time and that property value has gone up in value, do you get to see any of that? Yes or no? No, you don't. The landlord gets all that money. Okay, so if you started renting and it was worth 100,000 to start with, and then 5 years later it was worth 200,000, then guess what? That money is not yours, that belongs to the landlord. But wouldn't it be great if that money belonged to us as tenants? If you're a tenant and it belonged to you, wouldn't that be pretty cool? Yeah. So rent to buy is simply you taking your rent and a portion of that rent goes towards buying the house. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, first of all, who is going to do that? And second of all, why would they want to do that? Okay, well, let me tell you from a tenant's point of view, and let me tell you from a landlord's point of view in a second. And forgive me if I'm a bit slow, because I'm trying to concentrate on the road at the same time. But I thought I'd create this video for you because it's really important, because otherwise, every single month, you're losing your rent. So why does a tenant want to do it? Well, if you're renting a property right now, then you have to abide by certain rules. For example, if you want to make the property look really pretty, you have to check with the lettings agent that you have permission to do that. If you want to create another room and knock through a wall, you can't do that because it's not your house. It's the landlord's house. And the problem with that is it never ever feels homely. It never feels like it's your home. And that's one of the things why we want to do this, is because if you're renting a property and you're paying all that rent, then you want that at least to be your home. Secondly, every single penny that you're spending right now is going down the drain. You're not seeing any of it. That rent is literally going into someone else's pocket, and even worse, you're paying off somebody else's mortgage. So at the end of the day, the landlord is going to have a property, if they're paying every single month to pay off the mortgage, that you're paying off their mortgage. So in fact, you're making them money. So that's another reason why you want to do it. And second of all, if you're renting a property right now, I would rather say, well, if I'm renting a property, I would want to know that eventually that I have some skin in the game. I've spent all this time renting this property. I want a share of that house. So how can we do that? Well, let's look at it from a landlord's point of view. Why would a landlord want to do this? Well, first of all, a landlord would want to do this because they don't want the hassle of tenants. Like if you've ever been a landlord before, and you've rented property, then you know that sometimes tenants can be a pain in the butt. Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes they'll call you up and they'll say, you know what, no, the boiler's not working, or this is not working, or can you go and change my light bulb, so on and so forth. And the problem with that is that it's a hassle to them. They don't want the hassle. That's the first thing. The second thing is that landlords, eventually their exit strategy is to sell the property, but for most times it's quite hard to sell a property right now. So they want some sort of backup that they can actually rent the property and eventually be able to sell that so they have an exit. So they know that straight away that they've, that they can make profit straight away. And also as well for landlords, they sometimes don't want the risk. Let's just say, for example, a window gets broken, or a boiler breaks, or let's just say there's damp coming through the walls. For a lot of landlords, they don't actually want that risk. And some landlords become accidental landlords, meaning that house was actually left to them. And if it's left to them, then they don't really want to be a landlord, but they just had to be the landlord, if that makes sense. I hope that's making sense. And for a lot of the times, that I always say to people that if you're a landlord and you don't want to be a landlord, it's like having this noose around your neck that it was left to me, but I don't want this hassle. I don't want the responsibility. And some of you may be thinking, well, why don't landlords just give the responsibility to lettings agent, which is a valid question. And the reason why most people don't do that is, in my experience, a lot of the lettings agents, they do charge a lot of money. So sometimes having this property could be a liability because they have to pay a mortgage, and if they have to pay a lettings agent, then there's no profit in that. So one of the things that you have to do is you have to find what I call motivated landlords. These are landlords who don't want the property, who don't want the hassle, who actually have been left this property, but it's become such a stress and a drain on their energy that they don't want it anymore. These are the people that we need to find. These are the landlords that we need to approach. So how do we go about doing that? Really simple, just 3 steps. Number 1 is you have to approach the landlord to make sure that they actually want to sell the property. Is it something they want to do? Is it something that they're keen on doing? Is it something that in the future, if it came to it, that they would actually want to sell the property? That's the first thing. Second of all, we actually want to have some of the rent go towards paying off the mortgage. So say, for example, if I'm paying £1,000 every single month, I'll say to the landlord, you know what? I want £200 of this £1,000 to go towards buying this property. So, every year, if you were to save £200, you would save £2,400 up every single year. So if you rented for 2 years, you'd save a £5,000 deposit. And another thing that you want to do as a tenant is you want the option to buy the property. Now, let me tell you what an option is. An option is it's the right, but it's not the obligation. It's the right, but not the obligation to buy that property. So the reason why you have the right to do it is because, let's just say you was to rent for 5 years. Whatever the property grows by, with an option, you agree with the landlord that I agree to buy it at today's price. So if today's price is £100,000 and in 5 years time it goes up to £150,000, then you have the option to buy it at 100. Now most people say, well, how do I make the money? You see, the house that you're living in may not be the house, or the house that you're renting may not be the house that you particularly want. It may be just what I call a stepping stone. It may be a stepping stone for you to get to the next property. So let's just say it goes up to 150. You have the option to buy the property, which means you also have the option to sell that property as well. So let's just say, for example, you sell it for 150,000. You give the landlord their 100,000, and then you get to keep the 50,000. So that's another way you can make money by renting a property and eventually owning it or selling it, because then you can use that 50,000 to really buy the house that you want. I hope you found this useful. Obviously, there's a lot more complicated matters for that. Yep, you can go if you want. Oh, they're letting me go. Obviously, there's a lot more detail in how that works. But as you can imagine, for a lot of the people who are renting right now, it's a fast and quick way for you to start earning some I call rent credit. Because if you're not doing rent credit at the moment, then eventually what's happening is you're probably getting to a point where you're renting every single day, your rent's going towards nothing, and the rent's going down the drain. This way, when you do it this way, your rent goes towards, at least a portion of that goes towards buying the property. You also have the option on the property, which means if the property prices go up in value, then you get to have a portion of that. And third of all, that if you don't even want the house that you're living in, you know, you make it homely for the time that you stay in there, but eventually when the house prices go up in value and you're thinking, well, what if it doesn't go up in value? Well, if it doesn't go up in value, then the great thing you can do there is you can say, well, you know, if it doesn't go up in 5 years, I'll just extend it, right? And that way your rent's not going down the drain. You are getting some rent credit, you're capitalizing on the capital appreciation, and you get to live in a house that you can fix up and make your own. And that's why I think this strategy is so powerful. And for a lot of you who are already doing this, who are already in the mindset of, you know, renting a property and you want to become that homeowner, you want to transition through, it's one of the best ways to do it, one of the fastest ways to do it, because A, you won't have to get a deposit because you're saving it up and you're banking on the capital appreciation going up. And secondly, you won't have to get a mortgage because the mortgage that you get from the person who actually owns the property. So it's really being seller financing, if that makes sense to you. I mean, I'll be creating a lot more videos like this, just go into a lot more detail on how this works. But if you're renting right now, stop renting. Start renting to own and make that rent work for you, because the saddest thing I see is for you to work so hard for your money and for a big chunk of that to go down the drain. My name is John Lee from Wealth Dragons, and I'll see you soon with more videos and more content. Thank you.